everyone. Hi, yeah, it's Jackie here from the LGFA, and we are back. It's the first of our summer shows as we look ahead to what's coming up on a given weekend. And next week, we'll be looking ahead to the following weekend and looking back on the previous one, if you get me. So that's where we're at. So I've four very special guests this afternoon. I've Lizzy Kent, who's the joint manager of the Wexford Ladies and also coach to the team, who you will have seen featured in our video series Heroes of Today Inspire the Next Generation recently. Some lovely footage from there. Nadine Doherty from Donegal, top right hand side of my screen as I look. Councillor Emma Murphy from Dublin is bottom left hand side of my screen, and a recent graduate from the LGFA's Learn to Lead programme. And Michelle Ryan, all round media guru, is bottom right, and former Waterford player. There you go, Michelle. That's some introduction, isn't it?
Or if you say so, Jackie.
Folks, great to have you on. Lizzy, I introduced you first, so I'll start with you first. I just want to kind of get an insight into where Wexford are at the moment, because obviously got to Croke Park last year, which I think, looking back, was a phenomenal achievement, bearing in mind where he had been earlier in the campaign. Back in the Intermediate Championship again this year, have won 2 out of 2 into the quarterfinals, and also coming off the back of disappointment of losing a lead in the National League Division 3 final, also a Leinster Intermediate final. Lizzy, you seem to have a knack of being able to lift these players after setbacks. It's you know, this road with Wexford, it doesn't run smooth, but by God, you're flying in the Intermediate series at the moment.
No, it certainly doesn't run smoothly anyway, that's for sure. I think I keep saying that my hair is getting grayer by the week, but absolutely, it's like really enjoyable. And I suppose, look, you know, when we look at, we're kind of looking at the season as a whole, and our big aim is obviously in relation to the build up to championship like everybody else. So yeah, of course, like disappointment in relation to the National League and the Leinster final just a couple of weeks ago. But again, they're great opportunities for learning for us, you know, as in every day that we go out, it's an opportunity for us to kind of develop and learn and experience those big days and take the learnings from them. And it's all credit to the girls, really. Like, you know, you say that, you know, the bounce back comes from them, not from me. So, you know, a lot of our process of what we do is we look at what we're doing and we look to try and improve it every week. So I suppose the way the Intermediate Championship is going, we're really happy just to be in the next phase of it and to be safe at this stage. That's, I suppose, first and foremost. So I think it's just going to be a really exciting championship, and it's shaping up that way anyway.
It is. It's competitive, isn't it? I mean, you have Kildare there, who won Leinster, and they're already out, you know, of the All-Ireland series. So those are the swings and roundabouts, Lizzy. If somebody told you a few weeks ago you'd lose the Leinster final, but you'd been in an All-Ireland quarter final, you'd probably have said, yeah, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, 100%. And I've kind of said this from the start of the Intermediate Championship, like there's 13 teams in it, and on any given day, any team can beat the other team, and that's proven, you know, as in we had like tough games in the league against like the likes of Longford and stuff, and they've showed that progression into the championship, and have obviously got themselves out of the group. And you know, I'm sure, and I suppose it's the element of the split season as well that we're all kind of adjusting to as well. So we've gone with the Leinster Championship week on week, 5 weeks on the bounce, and that's super. It's excellent in the sense of, you know, the excitement of playing game after game, but that's a heavy toll as well. So it's trying to get the balance of the weeks and the periods in between. One, obviously to manage that rest and recovery, but also to get that element of training in, so that, you know, you're spiking again at different times in the year. So yeah, I think every team is kind of, I suppose, finding their feet with that. But, you know, as I said to you, we're delighted to be at the quarterfinal stages now, and safe is the other element as well. So
great stuff, and we look forward to seeing more of you over the coming weeks. Lizzy, you're Leitrim on Sunday, isn't it, in the final group match? So look, just final one for now, Lizzy. What way do you look at Sunday now? Is it a case you keep the momentum going and try and bed in that 15, that strongest 15 you might have in your head, or are you trying to give players some game time now that the pressure is off somewhat?
I suppose our squad is hugely important to us. So as in, you'll probably have seen that even over the weeks, you know, our squad or our team, our starting 15 changes from week to week. So we'll just continue with that process, as in the players who are performing will get the game time on Sunday, and on we go from there. So I think, like, yes, it's maybe a game that points are not at stake per se, but anytime you go out and play like that, it's going to be a competitive game. So we'd like to just keep building on our performance, and I suppose get a good one on Sunday again, and hopefully get over the line on Sunday.
Good stuff, Lizzy. Feel free to bounce in and out of the conversation at any stage. I'm going to go down to Emma. Emma, who's, I hope you don't mind me saying it, Emma, you're living the life vicariously of an intercounty footballer. Your good wife, Caroline Conway, plays for Roscommon. up against Longford on Sunday. So how has Caroline found the season so far? Obviously winning Division 3, the lead in the National League, and got up to Division 2 was a huge boost as well. Setback against Leitrim in the Connacht final, and now in the All-Ireland series.
Yeah, Jackie, I suppose it's really kind of interesting how Lizzy's finding the Wexford side of things. I only watch from afar and try not to stress anyone out going to matches on a Sunday, wish them good luck on the way out the door and then follow out the door to watch, So like last weekend was a big one for Roscommon, I suppose. Like they've had two ding-dongs with Kildare over the National League semi-final, and then last week, when Kildare were, needed to win last week, but it was an absolute game for the purist. If you like ladies football played fast, with skills on show, it was 2-4 to 2-4 after like 15 minutes. It was just, your neck was going end to end watching a match, which is phenomenal. But yeah, no, it's an interesting time kind of for Roscommon as well. They're up against Longford at the weekend, and the Intermediate Championship is so interesting. It's so interesting that the two provincial champions in Kildare and Leitrim are now out.
Yeah.
And I suppose it does actually look at the kind of the condensed season as well. How many times can teams peak in a season? I mean, you're asking teams to peak 3 times in a season at league level, at provincial level, and then at All-Ireland level. And you're seeing that, Kildare won Leinster, and now they're out of the All-Ireland series. Roscommon got beaten by Leitrim in the provincial series, but they're through to an All-Ireland quarter-final after playing one match. And the 3-team groups are cruel a little bit. They are cruel. You can lose one match and you're gone, or you can win one match and you're through. So it's an interesting time, and it was an interesting time in that sense as well. But they're going to Longford, really good Longford team who backed Kildare really well. They were excellent against Kildare. Like, they set up and they're really well structured. So it's great to see teams with, they've got game plans and structures. You saw the same at Louth and over Down at the weekend. They were again set up really, really well. So the Intermediate Championship is very exciting at the moment.
It really is. I mean, you mentioned Longford there, and I think I wrote in one of the previews before the championship that they're always an interesting team. Like, they bet Westmeath in the first game out last year, and Westmeath went on to win the All-Ireland. So very, very interesting team. I want to keep an eye on. We'll come back to you in a little while. And we're just conscious to bring in Michelle and Nadine waiting patiently as well. Michelle, in the car, what's happening? Are you on the way home? Are you going? What are you up to? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm on the way home. I was in school there, leaving Certisan, junior Certisan, so I had a group of junior certs doing Irish early this morning, so I popped into school to see how they got on. And
the fear.
Yeah.
Take you back, wouldn't it?
That was like, Jackie.
Yeah, my God, I did it twice actually. I repeated the leaving, would you believe? Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, so no, all went well, so I'm happy enough. I'm glad that they're back sitting exams, to be honest. So, and I think when they look at it, they're probably happy with that enough themselves as well.
Okay, Michelle, it's senior championship gets underway next weekend, and it just so happens that it is the meeting on TV of Donegal and Waterford. So off you go. Let's have a verbal joust. What's the vibe like down in Waterford, Michelle? I know you've stepped away, obviously, but do you hear much from the Ballymac girls, or do you try and maybe stay away from it, or do you just take that passing interest now, Michelle?
No, I definitely still have an active interest. And I've been to all of the games that have been on around here in Dungarvan throughout the league, and to be honest, of course, like, the county players are training with the county, and we don't really see them much at club. But as well, when I meat up with them, like, I'm very good friends with a lot of them, and you're very conscious of that. When you're a player, how much people ask you about these things, and maybe you just want to be left alone. So I would always kind of just say, how are things going, as a general sense, and straight away by their answer whether they want to tell you more or not. And more often than not, they just want to be left be. And I can understand that, because there's a lot of preparation to it, both mental and physical. And sometimes your downtime, you don't want to be talking about it all the time as well. But I suppose I would have gotten the vibe throughout the league, and I suppose after the recent games, that things were going well, and I think they still are going well. They were very disappointed with the loss to Cork, I know, a few weeks ago. I think they're looking forward to kind of, I suppose, making up for that a little bit, and bringing a few aspects of the game that I know Pat Sullivan wasn't happy with certain things in that last game against Cork, and just improving on those areas. Now, with that said, they've an incredibly tough group. They've Cork, obviously, again, and Donegal, and
And I suppose the one thing about going into the match against Donegal is, and it's always been the way, whether we were playing them in intermediate, and we haven't met them actually much in senior at all, but it's the very physical brand of style of play that they bring is, and I think that's hard for a lot of teams to match, to be honest, the pace they bring, and whether or not Waterford kind of can. Waterford, we've never been a very physical team over the years. It's a lot of it is based on pace and good use of the ball and trying to break through. And if we can, I suppose, keep working on that side rather than trying to adopt to anything too new or too varied from what I suppose the style that we've been playing, then, you know, and try and stay with Donegal as much as possible in the physical sense, or try and avoid the physical tackles as much as possible, then I've no doubt that we'll stay in the game. But it is definitely a very tough task for Waterford. But no doubt something, as I said, they're looking forward to, especially after their last game against Cork.
Nadine, what about Donegal then? Obviously contested a National League final and an Ulster final, lost out in both, but here comes the All-Ireland series. What are your thoughts and reflections on them?
Yeah, they'd be terribly disappointed, Jackie, on both finals. I've talked about it extensively, you know, and the girls know themselves. They were the architects of their own downfall, you know, there's no better word for it, really. Very difficult group. Like, as Emma alluded to there, like, 3 teams in a group is cutthroat, but if you look through the senior championship in general, you can nearly predict who's going to come out of all the other groups. But I think this group, Michelle touched on it, Waterford have really put it up to Cork the last couple of years, and I think in the league they were very competitive, very unlucky to find themselves in that relegation playoff. I think if they were in another group, they wouldn't have been there. So I think, look, Donegal will have focused on the championship. It's all about championship for Donegal. The Ulster Championship would have been a bonus. In terms of Donegal being physical, I don't know, Michelle, like, we've always been called physical over the years, but if you look at that Donegal team, like, okay, you have big strong players and Katie and Yvonne and Karen Guthrie, but like, Donegal are quite small in a lot of areas around the pitch, and like, do they stop teams physically around the middle? I genuinely wouldn't think so. Had they done so, maybe against Armagh and against Meath, they might have a league final, a league championship and an Ulster championship. I think where Donegal have really improved is their transition and their pace that you mentioned. I don't think they'll have a huge physical advantage over Waterford, to be honest. And I think if they are going to win it, which I do expect they should, it will be with that pace they need to bring, and probably a little bit more clinical up front. And I think that has been Waterford's problem over the last few games, over the last few seasons, to be honest. Like, you know, you have really good forwards, you've Delahunty and those girls, and then you have the Camogie as well, and like, Michelle might be able to come in a bit more in this. Like, they seem to be without their top forwards on the big occasions because of clashes. And I do think if Waterford had one, maybe 2 more top class forwards, they would be really, really challenging those teams. Because in fairness, in a few games, there's been very little between them. Very little. But yeah, I don't see Donegal dominating physically. I do see them dominating maybe pace-wise and their transition. That's where they should be winning it.
Now, Michelle, so in tennis parlance, Nadine is served. So over to you for a forehand, backhand return. Off you go.
Well, I suppose, look, when you're talking about physicality, I would have always found Donegal very, I suppose, aggressive on the ball, and a very, you know, they just make their presence really, really felt, whether they're on the ball or not on the ball. And that's not something that every team, you don't always feel the presence of every team when a player is standing beside you. You don't always feel them, you know, that close to you. You don't always feel them getting in on you that hard. And Donegal have always been that team to me, to my mind. And I don't think that has changed. But I agree with a few things Nadine said there about, I suppose, Waterford. It has been a feature of Waterford that we don't have that marquee forward, you know, that real person that, you know, you can go to and will get you those scores and, you know, can take it on. And if they're in any bit of space, you know, there's danger brewing, like the likes of Geraldine McLaughlin, the likes of Amy Mackin. You know, we don't have that. And I suppose Maria Delahunty has been playing with the last 12 months, so she was another big loss. you're trying to, like, Katie Murray is carrying a lot there. I suppose she has the pace, she has dynamic movement, and she can be dangerous. I know Aileen Wall didn't feature throughout the league and is back in the camp now with the last number of weeks as well, and will be there. But I suppose just to have someone to break through those lines at that time. And I know in the last game there against Cork a few weeks ago in the Munster Championship, you know, I definitely saw an improvement to the style of play with regards to breaking through the lines rather than playing so laterally. And it did benefit them. And you're right, there hasn't been much between them and Cork. But at the same time, I mean, I've been saying that with years, and I know we had a win over them in 2017, but at this stage, that's 5 years ago now, you know, and they still have that upper hand. And I suppose another key feature, as well as the attacking form of Waterford, which as I said, I have seen improvement in, is the conceding of goals. And that could be a problem as well on Saturday, because you know how dangerous that Donegal forward line can be. I really genuinely think over the last number of years, that combination of forwards has always had the potential to do huge damage. And I would love to see, you know, the likes of Shirley McLaughlin, I suppose, you know, in the big games and in the big finals, because the player of her caliber deserves it. Now, having said that, that doesn't say I'm wishing she wins on Saturday, but you know, but you know what I mean. They have that power, and I do think they have goals in their armory, and that's something Waterford needs to be aware of.
Are you on Pelham on Saturday, Michelle, or what's your?
Yeah, I'm in Birr on Saturday. Actually, it's my first time since I've been doing this in 2019 that I get to cover a Waterford match. So I'm thrilled at that.
There you go.
Michelle, just on that with Waterford and the goals, like I find with them, they'll concede 2 or 3 goals in the space of 10 minutes. It's like they have a barrier up for like 40, 50 minutes, and then when things fall apart, they absolutely fall apart in a short space of time. And it seems to be in the second half or near the end of games. Do you think, has it been fitness with them, or it's really hard to figure out, because they are brilliant for a spell of a game, and then it's like 10 minutes, 3 goals, game over, done. You know,
and that's very like the way it was in the Munster Championship against Cork. We'll say Cork got a goal, and Waterford got 2 goals, and Waterford kind of claw it back, and it's tough, and it's a hard graft, and it's not easy to get the points, and they get them, and they were plugging over a few points from frees and so on, and they're working so hard, and yet you're right, there's just a lapse there then for a few seconds. And after working so hard to maybe bring back a lead to maybe 2 points or whatever, and then they go down and it's too easy to get a goal, and it kind of gets a little bit opened up through the middle a little bit, I think, most of the time. Now, having said that, Rosie Landers, who was a top class goalie in my mind, hasn't been available to Waterford this year, decided not to play this year, and that's been a major loss. And that's not taking away, you know, either from, you know, from, I suppose, the efforts that are made to replace her, because it's not easy to put your hand up and then, you know, step into the goals after that. But I do think I think it's a concentration and kind of a thing, to be honest, Nadine. I know the girls have been working very hard on fitness and so on. I do think it's a lapse of concentration, and maybe just an inability to kind of push on themselves to bring it to a game where it's level or they go ahead. It's always kind of clawing back to maybe a point or 2 within the reach, and then they're conceding, and then it just makes the task even more difficult on themselves.
It's going to be an interesting game. It's the first of 2 on TG4 on Saturday. As you're aware, Michelle, we also have Galway Kerry at 7:15, and then also across the senior championship on Saturday we've Mayo against Tipperary, Dublin against Cavan, and Monaghan against Meath. Meath, of course, the reigning TG4 All-Ireland senior champions. Lizzy, just on that, I mean, you're obviously operating in that intermediate environment at the moment, and I know we've talked about it and we've heard it ad infinitum, as they say at this stage now, but Meath's achievement to go from intermediate winners to senior winners in the space of, was it even 12 calendar months? It was probably 9 or 10. That was off the chart stuff, really.
Yeah, it was, and it was phenomenal. I think it actually gave the game as a whole a real lift, and I think as well in relation to intermediate teams, it gave them kind of that impetus to kind of think, wow, yeah, why not, you know? And I think for me, there's probably 2 key things with Meath that have really pushed on. We would have obviously had a few ding-dong battles with Meath over the years in the intermediate championship. 3 or 4 years ago, we would have been kind of meeting each other quite regularly. And it's funny, when I still look at the Meath squad list, a lot of the players involved 3 or 4 years ago are still involved. And I often find something that's a challenge with a lot of like the inter-county squads, you know, as in that transition of players every year. So it's nearly it's a constant rebuild where they've had that opportunity and have continued to keep adding, keep building, so I think that's a credit to them and the work that they're putting in. And I do think too, I suppose on a physical element of it, I think they just exploded after COVID. I think, when I look at a number of the girls there, their conditioning and the style and the type of game that they play, you have to be at a really supreme level. And they do that so well, and they execute their game plan just fantastically well. And I don't think they're going to be too far away again this year.
Yeah, I like it. It only seems like yesterday, but I remember Katrina Murray for Wexford scoring a hat-trick of goals against Meath in a league final in Birr. And Wexford won that game. So I mean, that's not what are we talking 5-6 years maybe something ago?
Yeah, it's about 4 years ago to be precise. Yeah, absolutely. So as in we talk about it a little bit in the sense of obviously where Meath have gone.
2018, wasn't it? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So but I suppose as well as I said, when I look at some of the changes in our squad, there would have been a big transition in that, whereas a lot of the Meath girls, and maybe it was an age profile at that stage as well, we were maybe at one end of the scale and they were at that other end, but they've built on that momentum year on year. And I mean, like for any team to turn around and lose 2 All-Ireland finals and still stay at it and still was phenomenal. You know what I mean? And I was actually up in Croke Park on those days. And I remember, the disappointment and the devastation, and that can often be a deterrent for teams, we're never going to win one. Like at that period of time, they'd lost, I think it was that league final in 2018. There was a Leinster title or two along the way, and then those 2 All-Ireland finals. So I just think it's phenomenal in the sense of, I suppose, that element of staying at it as well, because sometimes, as I said, that is a deterrent. But again, as I said, that squad from 2018, there's not, from what I can gather, a lot of the names are very familiar to me in relation to their squad list. So it's just a real credit to them and to their management team. I mean, Eamon has been there for a number of years. Great guy, great setup, great coaching structures. And, I think everyone thoroughly enjoyed the final last September. And, again, I suppose the question was, could they sustain it? And, they've done that. They're hugely competitive again this year. And as I said, they won't be, I don't think, too far away again this year.
Absolutely, Division 1 champions and lost narrowly to Dublin there in the Leinster final recently as well. So they will be thereabouts. Lizzy, Emma, do you keep an eye over the entire landscape in terms of the intermediate championship? I know you do. You like to keep an eye on all of the groups and what's happening. Or are you invested in the Roscommon piece now? Or is it the case that, no, we want to obviously keep an eye on what's happening in the other groups, because obviously there's the permutations there and who we could meet or who we might meet down the line? What's the dynamic there at play?
Yeah, I suppose I'd be the super fan of the house. Like I'd watch football for fun, and it's probably because that's I coach at club level and play myself, but it's all like I'd be the one that goes to kind of matches in general. But you kind of have to keep abreast of the whole championship and what's coming behind it in the junior sense and in the senior sense as well. So no, I mean, because you're coming across teams consistently within the intermediate setup. Be it the league, be it the provincial sides, you're coming across the same side time and time again. So you do kind of keep an eye kind of on everything across the board. And it's, it is like that. It's Lily talks about the kind of the transition between intermediate and senior and how Meath have managed to do it. I mean, there's an intermediate yo-yo that's happened traditionally, or the team goes up, team goes down, team goes up, team goes down. And you can see with kind of Westmeath this year, they had a super win last year in the intermediate championship, but they're in a rebuilding phase now in terms of a lot of players retired, and they've a huge amount of retirements. They have a new management team in there with Michael Finneran, so they've got that transition piece as well, and it's going to be a really challenging championship, I think, for them to to hold their place at senior level. But if you'd asked at the start of the 2 weeks ago, did I think that Sligo and Down would get relegated? Absolutely not. I mean, particularly Down. They had a really good league campaign. They were semi-finalists in the league. Excellent players, really interesting attacking forward, played through the likes of Jessica Foy, really lights up a park when they're playing, and now they're down at junior level. So it's that kind of, the intermediate piece is always going to be really, really interesting. So you do kind of have to watch it, and I try kind of we try not to talk about kind of football in the house. You know, I ask how training has gone, you know, more keeping an eye on the driving up and down the road and that type of thing, watching out the window to make sure the midnight returns are coming in the door. And you know, did training go well? Did you commit any injuries? No. Okay, grand. You know, so it's probably we approach kind of things kind of in two different ways. I'd approach it from you know, a grow of the game and an interest in the game, and you know, that kind of development of the game. So it's two very different standpoints.
Brilliant. So you're heading out to Dublin Cavan for us on Saturday as well.
I am, yeah.
Brilliant. So
Jerome.
you'll be alongside Jerome Quinn for our live stream coverage. So again, just to recap, Mayo Tip, Dublin Cavan, Monaghan Meath, they're all live stream games. Donegal, Waterford, Galway, Kerry, TG4. Then on Sunday we have Fermanagh, London and Junior, Wexford, Leitrim, Lizzy of course, Offaly, Wicklow. Intermediate, Longford, Roscommon, Laois, Tyrone, Limerick, Antrim in the junior, Derry, Carlow in the junior, and Clare against Louth in the intermediate. So a packed weekend in store. Folks, we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes. Michelle, I want to go back to you, and I'm going to stick your head straight onto the chopping block. Right, you've obviously experienced both grades, intermediate and senior. So I want you to call your favourites for the All-Ireland titles in both grades, and I will be keeping this clip for future reference.
I don't think I can top the calling of the semi-final win for Meath last year.
Brilliant.
Anyway,
Remember it well. Yeah, absolutely.
So as long as I've that in my corner, then I don't care after that. I think, look, if I just look to the senior first of all, like the interesting story now, and I read an article actually this morning in the Examiner, and God forgive me, I just can't remember who wrote it, but they were talking about, you know, 2 years ago, would you have thought there was going to be such a new rivalry in ladies football that Meath and Dublin are now in, you know, and I suppose already this year, the battles that they've had throughout league and Leinster Championship, and everybody wondering now, you know, I suppose it's kind of 2-1 to Dublin this year, and then wondering then, like, it comes semi-final time, will we see that again? And that to me is kind of the key battle and the key question, because I think whoever comes through that semi-final is probably going to be your favourites for the final. I already said it, I would love to see the likes of Armagh and Donegal be in an All-Ireland final as well. But I think my head is telling me that you're looking at All-Ireland champions coming from either Dublin or Meath, and probably whoever comes through that semi-final. I think, to be honest, I think Meath are done now with the whole, you know, coming from intermediate story, because it's a fairy tale and it's absolutely incredible. And we've celebrated it and we've talked about it, and rightly so. And they have too, and rightly so. But now it's about, okay, what else we can do. And I think there might be a little bit another kick in them again, this, especially having lost the Leinster Championship, Leinster to Dublin there recently. It's going to be ultra defensive, as we can see from that match. I don't know if we'll see such free-flowing style and breaking as quickly as we were used to last year. My head is probably going slightly for Meath now when it comes to the senior championship this year. Yeah. Okay.
And intermediate, very quickly, Michelle, who's your
to be honest, intermediate, the problem, the issue with intermediate is it is so difficult. I remember, I mean, as the girls were saying, like, I was surprised to see, you know, Kildare, because I would have thought they were within the top ranks in the last 2 years and so on. It's just a very difficult one to call. Like, I would love,
and Tyrone coming down as well are a big force.
Exactly, they are, and you see, that's the thing. The thing when you were relegated down from senior is the public perception is like, you know, you're going to be thereabouts come All Ireland final day. It's very, very difficult to be there and to get there, first of all, and sometimes, you know, there's a lot of work, and you don't realize until you go down to intermediate whether or not how much work really has to be done. So you can't take anything for granted. Tyrone will be favourites, and you know, they probably will, because they've had that senior experience, but it depends within their camp how much rebuilding has to be done in that sense. I'll say they're probably, because of the experience they've had, and they've had good success in their club level, I suppose, during last year as well. I know Eve McElduff's club were very successful in the club championship as well, but it's a very hard one to call. I'll say I think Tyrone will be thereabouts come the end of the year. Yeah.
Right. So Dublin and Tyrone. Right, Nadine. Briefly, intermediate and senior winners, please.
Starting intermediate, as everybody's touched on, like, you look at those intermediate teams and they're generally very, very different come championship to what they are in the league. Tyrone, you've mentioned coming down, they have that momentum. Went through a bit of an issue at the start of the year. They seem to have their management in check now. The guy who they brought in seems to be bringing them all along. Like that group, looking at that group C, Longford, Roscommon, Kildare, I would have looked at that and thought, I feel the All-Ireland champions will probably come from that group and could have been any one of the three. Then you look at Laois, really good in their division in the league, like surprised a lot of people. Yeah, there's loads. Clare are always a really good intermediate team. Wexford, like Lizzy, like they really are. It's really, really competitive. I think Roscommon have been very close on so many occasions in the last couple of years and have just fallen short. So I am going to tip them. And then at senior, look, what Michelle said, like you have Dublin and Meath, and just going by on the football that's been played for the last couple of weeks, you'd feel at this minute in time they're a good bit ahead of everybody else. And Donegal, who for me would have been in that, you know, kind of top tier as well, unless they really lift themselves after that Ulster Championship defeat, I think they're going to struggle. And saying that, if they do top that group, they're on the perceived easier side of the draw. And I don't think Donegal would mind playing Dublin or Meath in Croke Park. But Dublin, to me, the other day showed a huge amount in terms of their setup, in terms of their system, in terms of their intensity and their desire. I tipped them way back at the start of the year because I just think a hurt Dublin is a very dangerous animal. And you now have the hurt and the organisation and the belief that they can break down that Meath system, which they did the other day. I mean, they created 20 odd chances, if not more, and probably should have won by a bit more. Agree with Michelle. Meath are really, really going to come back. They'd be terribly disappointed after that Leinster final and would feel they have more in the tank. But the champions definitely coming from that side of the draw. And I'm just going to stick with Dublin from the start of the year.
Okay, Lizzy, I'm not going to put you on the spot for the intermediate because it would be slightly unfair, right? So call a, and we've about a minute left, folks. Call a winner in the senior for me, Lizzy, and then we've also got in the junior, Carlow, London, Derry, Fermanagh, and we've got Limerick, Antrim, and New York. So maybe a senior winner and a junior winner, and I'll ask you that question as well, Emma. So be prepared.
Yeah, I actually, similarly to Nadine, I fancy Dublin. I do think it'll be very, very tight between themselves and Meath, but I know, and I've been on a few different courses and different things with Mick Bowen, and I just think he'll be like a dog with a bone trying to get over the line on this one. So I think there'll be very little in it, but I fancy Dublin. And for the junior championship, I actually fancy Carlow.
Yeah, I think they're interesting.
Yeah, we played him in they played the intermediate Leinster Championship. Was hugely impressed with him that day. You know, really good setup, scoring forward. So I fancy Carlow for.
And even without Clean Ní Hay, you know, who's unfortunately injured with a knee problem, top scorer across all the grades last year, they still seem to be strong. Yeah, very interesting team to watch. I agree with you, Lizzy. Emma, your good self, senior and junior winners, please.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with Galway in the Connacht final. I thought they were excellent. They kind of were quite resilient against Mayo, but I couldn't really look outside Dublin or Meath. I think the girls are right. There's, you know, the Leinster final was another ding dong, and whoever comes through the semi final there, I really would fancy them to get over the line. From a junior perspective, either Limerick or Carlow. I think Carlow actually playing in the intermediate, the Leinster intermediate was crucial to them. They had a really good win against Fermanagh at the weekend. Yeah, they are up and coming. So yeah, if you're asking to tip one, Carlow, I'd say they're just thereabouts.
Brilliant. So some interesting times ahead, and we look forward to the weekend's action with relish. And you've teed it up beautifully, ladies, I have to say. So my guests today, Lizzy Kent, Emma Murphy, Michelle Ryan, and Nadine Doherty, thanks a lot for coming on. And we might see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of you, perhaps. We never know. Back here next week. Thanks a million, guys.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.